What's going on, guys? We have episode 21 today with Ryan Monolopolus. He is a stuntman, master of Eskrima, producer, director. The guy is really just doing it all. And we go through and we talk to him about, what got him started, his move down to Atlanta, coming from Buffalo, him being, a little bit of like a weird kid and not fitting in quite as much, and how that kind of affected things. His take on people sitting in the airport to then sit on planes while he's throwing kicks with his buddies is hilarious. And so we just had like an overall great conversation. I went to college with the guy, and he was just an absolute phenom when it comes to martial arts. Again, master in Filipino stick fighting, which is again like above that black belt. And then he went on to fighting in a thing called a tank. We get into this in the podcast and everything. And he was actually like a champion at his weight class. So the guy is an absolute monster. Taught people for a really long time. Now he's trying to get into more of like that director kind of thing. So we just go through his journey, his health and wellness, and everything else. So give it a listen. Let me know what you guys think. Today is Friday the 12th. Happy Lunar New Year. Have a good one. Enjoy. Thanks.
So apparently in Japan, it's just not as done anymore because it's a very safe place. So then people are just not looking to do it quite. I don't know. I'm sure that he has a better take on it than I do. But yeah, he was just saying that he can't find anywhere to train, and the dojo that I think he was at like ended up closing down because just monetary things. I'm sure part of it is going to be COVID too. Um,
Right. I
but
have heard that actually. Like there's the places like so for instance, like in the Philippines,
mhm.
this is a much different kind of situation, but in the Philippines, it's much easier to find a karate school or a kung fu school or a taekwondo school than it is to find anybody doing Filipino eskrima
Wow.
or art. This is much different, which is strange because it's their mother art, but it was also seen as very dangerous. A lot of people got very injured or died back in the day doing
Yeah.
eskrima, kind of phased out in a lot of ways.
I mean that makes that makes sense, right? Like I mean that might be similar to like America with football, right? Like America's pastime has always been football, and maybe it gets to a point where I don't know, football is not seen as safe enough anymore, right? Like I don't know. I can't imagine. I mean, would you? You're coming from like a martial arts background. Like, do you think that you would let your kids play football?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I would. I
yeah,
think I would. I mean, I believe in getting knocked around a little bit. I mean, listen, if I would let my kids fight, I'd let them do football.
yeah,
However, I'm not really that into football, so I probably wouldn't, if that was their passion or
mhm,
something like that, I would never be one to. I mean, I think life is meant to be lived a little bit dangerously,
yeah.
right? No, there's a difference between doing something with calculated risk versus
Yeah.
living stupid.
Yes.
Uh, and I even think about the kids like the way they have padding and shit now compared to how they did when my dad was playing football back in school and people
Mhm,
were just beating us out of each other with no pads.
yeah.
My
That's.
grandfather,
Mhm.
my late grandfather boxed a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. I think fucked around when he was in the Navy, but I
Mhm,
mean they just kind of like wrapped their hands up and
yeah.
and beat each other.
Yeah. Did your dad train too then?
My dad trained until yellow belt or maybe green belt.
Uh huh.
He trained a little bit in karate
Okay.
for a while, but my grandfather got him into it because he got into some kind of altercation as a kid.
Mhm,
And my dad said he wanted to train. He went and trained, learned some stuff,
mhm,
and I think he ended up. There was some kid that bullied him, and he
mhm.
ended up like getting back at this kid that bullied him. And then my dad kind of wanted me to do it, so that
Yeah.
was how I got introduced to it.
Mhm. And so, how old were you when you first started?
By the way, are we live
So
now?
I took it live. And
Great.
so yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I first started martial arts through the West Seneca Continuing Education Program.
Mhm,
That was something offered to like, young kids who were kind of just trying to get a sense of things they might be interested in.
mhm,
So I was 4 or 5 years old,
mhm.
something in that world when I first came to Datu Tim Hartman,
Uh-huh.
who had a place in West Seneca, and it was branded at the time as a karate school.
Mhm.
But I ended up finding out that it was kind of more of a branding thing. They were really an Arnis program,
Uh-huh.
Arnis program, mainly because if you put Arnis up on the door, nobody knows what the hell you're talking about.
Yes.
But karate up on the door, everybody's like, "Oh, go do karate."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I started around 5 years old.
And so Datu is above Grandmaster, or Datu is Grandmaster, or how does that work?
Here's where we get into some interesting politics of martial arts,
Uh-huh.
right? So, um, Datu is specifically a title that
Mhm.
does not reflect rank.
Okay.
So, Datu means tribal leader or tribal
Okay.
chieftain. So, back in the day, I mean, the day maybe like the 80s and the 90s, which our day, right?
Yes.
Grandmaster Remy Praesus was teaching modern arnis. He came from the Philippines with a modernized form of Eskrima and arnis that allowed people to practice without getting injured. That was the big thing. Is a lot of times when people were having full contact, Eskrima matches in the streets of Cebu, people were fighting to the death. It got this kind of taboo stigma around it.
Yeah.
Remy came over, started teaching a safer way to practice as an art within your art. So basically the way he was teaching it was an add-on to people's martial arts instead of its own standalone system. And that's how he pretty much permeated martial arts culture for 20 years in America. I mean, it was a crazy takeover. He was everywhere. And then he had his guys who were from the ground up, arnisadors, right? People who studied arnis. Basically. So 7 people in the United States were eventually awarded the title of Datu.
Okay.
And actually, I take that back. I don't think they were all in the United States. Dieter Knutel was a guy over in Germany. There was people in the United States and there was somebody in the Philippines, but only 7 people in the world were anointed the title of Datu. They were generally linked with 7th degree black belts, but it wasn't always the case. Okay. So now Datu Hartman, given that he runs his whole organization and is kind of the head of the art in his phylum, is known as a grandmaster.
Nice. So so I guess is there like the same kind of lineage that you see with, say like Bruce Lee taught this guy who taught that guy, and then and then the same thing in like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
What's cool about Filipino martial arts, or the Philippines in general, is it's an island-based place, right? It's very tribal. Yeah. So like, your family, my family kind of thing. So a lot of martial arts were family styles. So Praesus Arnis is actually a Praesus family style. Okay. Their father fought in World War II and fought against the Japanese using a lot of these systems. And then he taught the 3 kids, Roberto, Ernesto, and Remy, all of which carried on their father's legacy of Arnis, and they all started their own systems. So what Datu Hartman did was, through that lineage, united all the brothers. Roberto, who did Arnis de Negadan de Mano, and Ernesto, who did Kombatan, which was a lot of double stick work, and then Remy, who focused largely on stick and empty hand, did a lot of grappling, striking kind of stuff, under the art of Praesus Arnis. So from Grandmaster, it would be Remy Praesus, Datu Tim Hartman, myself. So I'm 2nd generation.
That's awesome, man.
2nd from the source. But I did actually train with Remy once or twice when he was still alive in the early 2000s, but I was a kid.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, like that's like a memory of literal history. You know what I mean? Like yeah. Like,
to understand your lineage, right? And that's the thing with modern arnis too, is it's a little different than something like karate, right? Where like karate, even like Japanese jiu-jitsu, a lot of these are long, kung fu especially, long storied traditions of preserving an art and keeping it alive through the centuries, kind of untouched. Whereas modern arnis from the beginning was about innovation. Remy taught it as a way to, like, if that doesn't work, change it. If this doesn't work, change it. So it was constantly about adapting the style, and it's still happening now through Datu Tim Hartman, and even the way, when I do get the chance to teach some stuff, the way I practice evolves all the time.
This is not something that I've really had a game plan on, but just in terms of like showing it to people, do you have sticks with you or no?
Do I have? I mean, I always have sticks. Also, there's just wine here, so I'm drinking one, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, hey, get loose.
It's 1 o'clock, man. Yeah, so actually, I got a pair of sticks that I used when I was fighting in Stick Fighting World. So these are Eskrima sticks. Things that are used in arnis or like a lot of different Filipino martial arts systems. Generally speaking, they're about the length of your arm. Yeah. That's about how long an Eskrima stick would be. See, these are impressed with an SFW logo. Nice. It's got SFW at the top. Yeah. These are basically pieces of rattan that are stripped and burned and styled, and I wrap them in tape because once you start using them, they kind of start to get banged up pretty quick. Yeah. Stick Fighting World was a full contact stick fighting league. So in Stick Fighting World, they took the paradigm of mixed martial arts, which was, 1v1 challenger inside of a cage, right? Yeah. With a set, but to the knockout. And they started adopting it for weapons fighting. Yeah. So they had this league up in Toronto, or actually it was London, Ontario. This was in Canada because they couldn't utilize it in the States. They did this thing called the tank. So the tank was a hexagon to distinguish it from the UFC. It's like their different thing. Yeah. And it was 3-inch thick plexiglass. So as opposed to like being inside the chains with the links, you're actually kind of like in what looks like a giant fish tank almost, with like a repressed floor, like you'd see inside of mixed martial arts stuff. So I had a couple of fights in that. I trained around, and I actually became the lightweight champion of Stick Fighting World back in 2014.
That's awesome.
and then they couldn't really get it legalized. People were getting a little hurt, you know. With the face cage on, obviously. I mean, this you stick to the head, you're going to die.
Yes.
But I mean, you could die at least, right? But they had it where you could fight single stick, open hand with gloves, cup, knee pads, and foot gear if you wanted. They also had double stick divisions, and they had bow staff divisions. And this was pretty interesting because you could go in and say, like, okay, they wanted to have these challenger rounds and never got to this, but where the returning champion would be able to, the other person picks their weapon first, and then the returning champion picks the weapon against what they pick.
Yeah.
So you could bow, single stick, double stick.
Yeah.
And they did change some stuff. Like, for instance, if you had single stick and empty hand, you could grapple and tangle. Whereas if you had double stick, grappling was not allowed. You chose to use two stick kind of thing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, good old, I guess it's not Uncle Sam, Uncle Cam, Uncle Cam, shut him down. You know, I think it actually had some potential to be a cool league. Maybe sometime down the line it'll come back.
Would it get super hot inside of like the tank because of just like the lack of wind?
Well, it's not like the top was closed, like we're like suffocating with air, although that's an idea for a different kind of competition. But no, it was. I mean, it was big, so it was pretty open. And, you know, you had like the top open up, and it was usually inside of a bigger facility. So,
dude, that's. I mean, like I remember hearing about it. I don't think I ended up seeing any of like the fights or stuff, but dude, like that just sounds absolutely gnarly. You know what I mean? Like just.
Oh yeah, it was savage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool because, like, you know, and again, you're geared up in some fashion. So it's not like you're worried. People who do like the live stick fighting without anything on their head, you're just asking to get banged up. I have a profession. I can't do that, you know?
Yeah.
But there is also a league called the Dog Brothers. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dog Brothers.
No.
Ooh. Give these guys a look.
Yeah.
Dog Brothers stick fighting is people wearing fencing cages.
Yeah.
Kind of whatever other gear they want, generally lacrosse gloves.
Yeah.
But it's full contact fighting. It's not award based. It's just these people that gather together, and you set the rules of your fight with the person you fight against. So there's people that go in there and fight with chains.
Yeah.
But you know, there's people that go in there and say, hey, we're going to fight stick with a dulled knife back behind us, and we could pull it at some point in grappling if we want. I mean, it's some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And one of my contemporaries, a guy named Craig Mason out of Canada, also a master in FMA, great practitioner.
Yeah.
He fights in the Dog Brothers event and was recently actually titled a dog name. He's Nickel Dog is his name. And once you fight enough fights, you get your own title in that league. Pretty cool.
Dude, that's so my friend when he was like 14, right, looked like a grown adult, right? Like had like your facial hair, right? Like just right off the rip. And they used to do so like I'm from New York City, and like out in the Rockaways there's like I'm sorry, I think it's actually Brooklyn. There's basically like area where it's all just like kind of like forest and like high weeds, right? And these guys set up real wrestling, like actual real wrestling, but with like a ring and stuff, right? Inside of like the forest, right? So like almost like a kind of like a bum setup, right? Which like, but basically like a full ring, the whole nine. But you had like random weapons that like you would see in fake wrestling, right? Like where they would cut themselves to bleed and stuff like that. So he was fighting like really actually wrestling grown adults, right? My friend who was 14, he's like 6'1", right? Like looks the part. I had 14 for reference was, I don't know, 5'2", and
right, that wasn't that cool.
Yeah. And so he's doing this, dude. He was fighting people. He came home one day and he had gotten hit in like the back, I think, with a tennis racket that was covered in barbed wire. Do you like do you know how stupid that is?
Some of the wrestling stuff that people do is absolutely insane. You ever see the movie The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke?
Yes, phenomenal.
One of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
And you kind of see just like the psychosis that people put them through to do that kind of fighting. I'm not into like barbarism. I don't need to like, you know, I do enough crazy adventurous shit where I feel like I might die at other times. I don't need to make my life like miserable for like this, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what
people do.
That's how I felt like a lot of the training was though. Like when you were like when I was first getting started. So I guess for reference for people who don't know, so I met Ryan when he was running the Combined Martial Arts Club at University of Buffalo, and
2010.
like 2010. Yes. My sophomore year. I think your sophomore year too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so you were running the club, and I started off. I went to a couple of, I think, like ninjutsu classes, right? Because they had like the older classes, and they were like, sweep the leg. And I was like wrestling with like an older dude who was like not in college, And he's like, yeah, just kick his leg out. And I'm sitting there and I'm like kicking his leg. I'm like, dude, I don't know what this like. It wasn't working for me. And so then I started going to Sancho, which I believe, if I remember correctly, is Chinese modern kung fu, right? That's like the description, right? And like
Sancho or Sanda is actually probably better described as a modernized form of Chinese kickboxing.
Okay. So started doing that and like really went ham with that, right? Between like Manny, who is I'm pretty certain black belt in like multiple different types of karate at this point.
Manny's a savage.
Yeah. And then at that point, Kyle Lano was running it, and Kyle like wouldn't do the workouts, but he would make us fucking just get smoked. You know what I mean? Like we would run, like he just ran the classes, and like he would make us run stairs. This is to your earlier point, right? He'd make us run stairs, and it got to a point where I'm beating everybody in like the stair runs, and he's like, "Yeah, wear the 40-pound weight vest," and I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, the 40-pound weight vest?" Like if you start getting like too far ahead of people, he's like, "No, here's the clap." You know what I mean? Like, and like that's your earlier point about like just arduousness of certain situations of like suffering.
Now that by the way, that I love. I just don't want to like break my skin open for no reason with barbed wire. But like I did last year. Are you familiar with David Goggins?
Yes.
Yeah, I did his 48 miles in 48 hours.
He's doing it again.
Yeah, he's doing it again. So I'm actually going to modify it and probably do a biking version of it. Maybe like 4x the challenge. Like maybe do 150 miles maybe inside of the same amount of time. Maybe a little more than that. But I did the 48 miles in 48 hours thing, and man, that was brutal. Yeah. I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in really pushing themselves. The sleep deprivation you get by the end of the second day is crazy.
I forget what was going on like the last time that happened. I forget if I was like working or what ended up going on. And I ended up doing it for like part of it, and I think I ran like 15-ish miles, and like it was just like, all right, fuck this. I had other stuff going on, and it was like you have to like that has to be your weekend. So I guess,
that's all you're doing. You're not doing absolutely anything else. I ran it with because quarantine had just started. So I had done it with like maybe 10 of my friends here, and most of them dropped out, but I think 4 of us finished.
Nice. That's fucking awesome.
I refuse to not finish though, and I don't run. I'm not like a runner. I hit the treadmill before I do my gym workouts, but that was a rude awakening to learning how off my alignment was in my body. And actually, what's great about pushing yourself in these kinds of like physical duress kind of exercises, like run 48 miles in 48 hours and don't sleep, is that you start to find that there's a lot of elements of complacency that our body has. For instance, maybe the way you step or the way you put weight on your supinated foot versus the outside of your foot, that you can learn from and then, continue to make your body better.
Yeah.
So that was actually a really transformative thing for me, because I learned that I pushed a little bit more on the outside of my foot and that my hips were slightly inverted. So I've been going to PT ever since.
Nice. Yeah, I'm doing PT right now for my shoulder, and the lady's like, "Yeah, your one shoulder has a droop," and I was like, actually, coincidentally, I think I got thrown by Booty in one of the chances in one of the fights in class, and I landed on my elbow this way and then jerked my shoulder forward, and I think I ended up like having some kind of like a like a light injury there, but my right shoulder now has like a droop to my left, just a little bit, right? Like you see it a lot more if I don't have on like a shirt, but like
you're standing upright.
Yeah, and so she was actually, dude, like I can't recommend it enough. To your point, PT, like just try PT for like 1 or 2 sessions for them to help you, like you said, find imbalances and stuff to that extent. Because I'm doing these drills with like a resistance band up against a wall. So let me roll back, and so I have my hand up and I go up and I hold the resistance band, and like the whole thing is you want to keep your shoulders and your chest straight, and then that is going to actually like firm up like your scapula, right? Like apparently like I have instability in my scapula, and so to that extent, like my shoulders are more level. I have less back pain, less shoulder pain from that, and so I highly recommend PTs because
totally. What's crazy is a lot of people don't realize that top level athletes are seeing PTs continuously. I even see a PT when I'm not really. I mean, the thing is, I do stunts, right? So I do a lot of stunt fighting specifically. So I'm hitting the ground hard. I'm flying through windows or getting lit on fire or pretending to hit cars, which means you just get hit by a car. So that kind of stuff. So I'm always constantly trying to evolve my body.
Yeah.
And what's funny is a lot of people, once they maybe get past their college time, they start to think like, oh, this is my body, but you can work on it constantly. So I see a PT at least twice a month. regularly. He also does chiropractic care and stuff like that, but there's always something to work on, a tightness you're finding. And that's the thing, is you start to get better at certain things. Let's say you pick up kickboxing or you pick up wrestling, you'll start to realize like, oh man, I can't drive as much from a lift, or I can't really get quite full extension on my leg. It seems like there's a droop in my knee. And you constantly work on things and make it better. And that's how you stay ahead of shit. If you're waiting to go to PTs or even some type of exercise scientist until you're so debilitated that you can't even do the basic things you want to do, you're behind the ball.
No, that's the huge take. We'll see what happens, but I have a buddy. I don't know if you know, you probably didn't meet him in college, but I have a couple of friends who work in PT, and like it seems like there's, similar to a lot of things right now, there's a lot of disruption that millennials are bringing to different things, and PT is actually like one of them, where, like you're saying, right, like work on and prep your body in terms of prehab, right, instead of rehab, right, like get better now instead of after an injury.
All day long.
Yes. And most rehab facilities, it's like I go in and I do, some stim, and then they do this ultrasound thing. You look up online and the ultrasound doesn't do shit. So why am I sitting there for 20 minutes doing an ultrasound thing?
Right.
And so there's a lot more, functional wellness that is being brought into through PT, that a lot, not that I'm sure there's old heads that are doing it too, but a lot of, kids are seeing, well, why isn't this working? You know what I mean? Or like, why can't I be an athlete into my 30s and 40s, right? And yes, like the PT aspect is awesome. I guess.
Absolutely.
Let's segue a little bit into that directly. Like, what's your current like training, rehab, prehab, supplement? Yeah, like what are you doing?
The whole 9 yards.
The whole nine. Well, you look great.
Thanks. Yeah, so I kind of oscillate depending on what it is that I need to do. Here's the thing: a lot of my work over the last few years is training towards. I do a lot of directing work where I'm writing and directing my own content, and it's looking like I'm going to be directing my first feature film this fall, which puts me sitting and standing a lot, but not the same kind of high intensity movement I need to do when I'm maybe doing stunt work. And without getting into details, I'm actually about to start a Marvel project doing some stunt stuff on their stunt team, which is going to be pretty cool. So at that level, you got to be moving with the highest level of movers out there, right? And how do I balance that with still moving a career? And this is relevant, right? Because I still need to move my directing career. I need to sit down at a computer and write. I need to send emails, have phone calls, all this bullshit. So I can't be in the gym like an Olympic athlete all day, every day. So I break it out pretty simply. The thing that changed my training, I would say, in my 20s was starting to do yoga. I never did yoga before. I thought it was dumb. I just, I didn't get it because it wasn't really shown to me properly. We had one, actually, if you remember, we had a yoga class at our CMAC.
Yeah.
But it was like a restorative yoga or a yoga nidra. And I was just going there and falling asleep. I didn't get it. Then I started going to hot yoga. Yeah. And I realized, like, oh man, I could really fire my body up and engage my muscles and get this awareness of stuff. I remember the first time I did an hour and a half hot yoga session, I was so sore. I could hardly move the next day. I'm like, damn. Whenever I'm really sore from a new workout, I'm like, I need to do that shit for a while. So I started doing yoga 4 days a week. And then I also started training with a couple of friends. I have to say I'm lucky enough that doing stunts, I'm friends with a lot of stunt men. And these are people who come from disciplines that they're very great at. So like, the way I come in with a Filipino weapons fighting background, an expert. One of my best friends is like, he didn't fight. He participated in American Ninja Warrior a bunch. So he was like a parkour legend. Yeah. This dude does shit that you wouldn't even believe, like jumping, flipping off stuff and landing and like somehow not dying. It's crazy. But he taught me a lot about parkour. And even if I'm just doing this like a few times a month, just what it's like to actually move your body with jeopardy in place and understand like, okay, how do I use my body, my entire body for movements to get myself a couple of extra inches? How do I throw myself over a bar, but have control to when I throw up, just get high enough so I can turn over and land on the other side. So I started doing that kind of work. And this is all on top of me doing, for years here, I ran Filipino martial arts classes. So we were swinging sticks 3 days a week too. And then something I neglected because I was already the size of a lot of people I needed to be. So sorry to go on a rant on this, but when you ask for the whole spiel. So to be a stuntman, often what you're doing is you're stunt doubling, right? So one thing that a lot of people don't know is that like Spider-Man, for instance, right? The actor who plays Spider-Man is on set a bunch, but anytime that person's in a suit, that's the stunt double doing the work. So a stunt person is often playing the hero character just as much, if not more, sometimes than the actor themselves. They're incredibly vital pieces of that kind of content. And I double a lot of lead men on shows. I the double for a guy named Matt Zuckery on a show called The Resident. I double a guy named Peter Jadio, who's he's the male lead on a show called Queen of the South. So I kind of needed to be the exact shape and size that I was. Yeah. So I leaned away from weightlifting like I did. I did a little bit of Olympic lifting stuff in college with Randy Thompson, actually, if you remember him.
Yeah.
Monster. Absolute savage. But now that I've kind of established myself there, I've really reintroduced weightlifting again. So functionally, I'm doing 10 to 15 minutes of stretching every morning when I wake up. I find that to be incredibly vital because you get stiff when you're waking up on stuff.
Yeah.
And I do about 10 to 15 minutes of stretching and moving around before bed. That's just a given on any day.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing yoga 3 to 4 days a week. I'm doing the gym 3 to 4 days a week, which is where I'm doing high rep, not as high of weight type work where I'm really isolating muscle sets.
Yeah.
And then I'm getting in my additional training. Like as of lately, I've been getting in 2 to 3 days of pad work every week where I'm just striking pads with some friends or working my kicks. And then I'll oscillate that. I might go over to doing some parkour because the gig I'm on requires me to do some of that.
Yeah.
So right now I'm about to be doing a lot of stunt fighting stuff. So I've been focusing on striking more. And it kind of changes around based on what the needs of what it is that I'm doing.
Are you still doing hot yoga, or is there no yoga studio, or how's that working for you?
Yeah, y'all are up in New York, right? We're here in the great state of Georgia.
Yeah.
So things are a little different here. I do some yoga online, so I can kind of follow the online classes, but it's not as hot, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually a studio down the street from mine that's open, like limited, like only 8 people in the room, and they keep that hot, and they've been doing the classes. So I've been going back into the studio again.
Nice.
Same thing with the gym. You know, I mask up, but I go to my gym. I've got to keep my body in shape.
Yeah. I used to do hot yoga also, and like it just became from my move that I couldn't find like another one. I started doing it in like Sheepshead Bay, and I don't know if you know, but typically speaking, like a lot of Russians are very, brusque, just very, straight to the point people. It was all Russian people. They were all sing-song, happy. It was like heavy, the heavy Russian accent, right? But the nicest, monk-like people that I'd ever met. And it was just like a weird dichotomy because it has always been, just very stiff. They're just very, direct people.
Yeah.
And, but
I dated one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess let's go into, more of like your rehab, right? So or recovery, right? And so you're obvious and also your prehab. And then I guess supplements kind of tie into that, I would assume, or no supplements.
Yeah, so I try to go as another big thing I did was I really cleaned up my diet, and I think that's the best form of dietary supplementation is always supplementing all the bullshit that people are usually eating.
Yeah.
So I just have a policy of eating as much dark greens as possible with whatever I'm eating protein heavy when possible, cutting out non-complex carbohydrates. Like I'll like cheat with salt and vinegar potato chips occasionally, but I try to even just reduce any amount of sugar that I can. So I eat very little sugar, which really helps with my energy drive.
Yeah.
And then I cut out any empty carbs that I can too. Anytime I can not eat a carb-based, like an empty carb-based meal, like lots of rice, even on sushi, I'm like cutting the rice off of my sushi these days.
Yeah.
Just 'cause it's not doing much for your body. So I kind of migrated towards complex carbohydrates, a lot of meats that are as free range, that are as healthy as I can find. Although I do still love sausage and I eat sausage sometimes. Yeah. And just a lot of dark greens. I eat like a half a pound of kale every morning.
That's awesome.
So I'm always eating kale. I'm trying to eat nutrient-rich food that's good for me. And in terms of supplements, I drink like a super green mix every morning. That has like a lot.
Superfood.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's got like a bunch of organic spirulina, alfalfa, just different kind of like super green foods. It's got wheatgrass inside of it.
Is it powder or no?
It's powdered.
I think I take the same thing.
Powdered, not pasteurized. So it's not like cooking the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
And then it's got some hemp and plant protein in it. Anyways, it's pretty good. Gives me good energy throughout the day, and I kind of use that instead of leaning on coffee. And then after a workout, I've just migrated away from whey protein over to plant-based protein. So I'm trying this new pea protein kind of deal. Maybe a little bit of creatine if I need to bulk up a little bit for a guy I'm doubling. So I might be taking creatine for a few weeks leading into that. And then other than that, I take a multivitamin.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nice. I mean, I tried doing the hemp protein and I cannot get behind it. That's my only thing. to the green superfood. So I actually take like a similar supplement. I forget who had done it. I want to say Rhonda Patrick on Joe Rogan like had been talking about it, and so she was talking about like the spirulina and stuff like that. I think the spirulina, like we both have tattoos, and I think that the spirulina actually helps with decreasing the heavy metal content from ink, depending on like from yeah. A lot of people with tattoos have like higher levels of heavy metals, and the spirulina is supposed to help that. But then for like a mixture of it, I remember her saying something about vitamin C being a good mixture with the green like leafies that are in it, right? Like the spirulina and everything else. And so I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically my brain just shortcuts things of okay, we have this, mix it with that to do the right thing, and my brain just goes, okay, we're doing that, throwing out that information, do the mix. And so I mix it with orange juice. Vitamin C is supposed to be good with like uptake for some of the nutrients, or just co-success of the nutrients that are in a lot of those greens.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, there's so many ways to look at diet too. Mm-hmm. I'm actually looking at going to see. You were talking about prehab stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So my roommate goes to see a really great, not naturopathic, but holistic doctor. She's legit. She's certified. She does blood work, evaluations and stuff, but she works a lot with people on their dietary trends and how to get gut balance correct for digestion, energy levels, that kind of stuff. And I've been thinking about jumping over to that because the way she looks at diet is very different than the way somebody who's trying to gain weight for something might look at diet. I find people tend to get a little bit carried away pretty quickly. Like, I have a friend who's a lifter who is savage. The dude is big, he's built, he knows what he's doing. But the amount of protein he has to consume in a day to keep that up is just far beyond what I really feel like putting my body and liver through on a day-to-day basis. So I'm trying to kind of take a what is my longevity life diet mixed with what do I need to do for the kind of work I'm doing now. If that makes sense. Drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
And then for prehab, you asked about prehab. I severed my AC joint on my right side 3-4 years ago now.
How'd you do that?
Doing stunts on MacGyver.
Okay.
Basically, I was doing a fallback, and I was crashing into a pad, and the pad was supposed to be there, and somebody thinned the pad out, and I ended up going into a part of a concrete wall.
Oh, man.
And then my arm was hanging, but it was like, I wanted to do a good job, and I was like, oh man, I could suck this up. So I went and completed the fight, the rehearsal that day, the whole rest of the rehearsal. I was hurting. My arm was hurting. And then when I ended up going in for it, I found out that I had a stage 2 separation, which is where basically your AC joint kind of comes like this. And a week and a half later, I actually ended up doing the fight on the show. When it actually came to it, which was good. It ended up working out. But then I gave it some real time. I did my yoga. I went to a PT school that wasn't very good. I went to a PT place where they were kind of just giving me basic exercise and stuff. I didn't understand the science. You sound like somebody who wants to really understand why they're getting into their stuff. So found a really good orthopedic doctor, PT, chiropractor combo. I'm actually going to him after we're off this today.
Awesome.
And he really broke down what was happening in my body. And honestly, the yoga. I was told I would never be able to handstand again. I was handstanding within 4 months.
Nice.
I like going upside down, so nobody's stopping that.
Well, I'm glad you're going upside down again.
yeah. It's functional exercise, man. Your body's going to do what you put it. I mean, people have this grand mystery to movement, but it's like your body does and adapts. It is so good at getting used to the things you put it under regularly. If you're just putting your shoulder in open positions and your shoulders closed, spend an hour a day doing that, you will see improvement, at least in 99% of people.
Yeah, I think, I think to that extent, right, like the general habits of most people are sedentary, right? And then you're sitting or you're on your phone, and so your shoulders are rounded, you're hunching, you know what I mean? And so a lot of people, need to be doing that kind of like opening drills with like their shoulder, the stretching, come up to like the corner, put your hands on the corner. That's really been helping me to open up, my chest and, the back muscles and stuff to that extent. And then like you said, with the yoga, dude, the PT that I'm doing, they make you do, I'm not even going to try and butcher it, but whatever, airplane mode when you're in yoga, I can't think of it. I don't know the name of it.
Airplane mode, the one where your arms are back?
Yes. And you bring your chest up off the floor. So they had me doing that for, my spine, for my shoulder rounding and everything to that extent. And so there's like a lot of overlap between yoga, which is really just functional movement, and then, PT actually doing the correct thing for your body. So I think that, I think a lot of what people end up doing in terms of yoga has been around for so long because it works. And then like PT goes, oh, yeah, we should be doing that. Like it's Yeah.
And a lot of people also have this perception that PT is just going into an office, but it's kind of like martial arts or anything else in the entire world. If you could take that and work that stuff on your own regularly and build good habits out of it, then you're going to see progress.
Yeah.
If I'm just going in to see a chiropractor and he's just cracking my back and I'm just like getting pain relief for that moment, it's just going to keep coming back because I'm not doing anything to correct what's happening in my body. I mean, me being, I have to write a lot, right? So I'm sitting in front of a computer writing, and I've even noticed in myself a tendency to come sometimes round my shoulders. So I'm really fighting back. I have a posture alignment thing that's not around here right now that I actually wear.
Strap?
Yeah, it's just keeping me back and agile. I'm in the gym and I'm constantly flexing my muscles here to make sure I'm, not depressing forward. Because you can even tell a difference when it comes to acting work, which I do a lot. What looks better when somebody's standing in front of you, somebody like this or somebody like this.
Yeah.
And there's a difference in the presence you bring. Now let's take that beyond acting. What kind of presence do you bring to your entire life just by having bad posture?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, what else have you been up to? I mean, every time I see you, you're in something new. You said MacGyver, like you obviously have a ton of stuff going on. So like, what else? And honestly, so post college is 2013 for us. Hit me with this is long form content. I'm fine with it. If people don't,
the spiel, huh?
Yeah, the spiel.
Sure. I mean, I break up like what you can only spend so much time doing so many things in your life. I try to be an auteur or a Renaissance man where I can. Like I'm picking up a little bit of guitar. I'm starting to mix like a little bit of electronic dance music type stuff, but those are just things to keep my mind spry. Those are my mental soreness that I get. I try to mix music and I'm like, oh God, this is hard. And then I want to get better because I'm inspired by things that I'm not good at. Constantly. I think that's the secret to life. Find some shit you're not good at, but you're interested in, and find yourself getting better at it. That measurable, scalable change gives you so much motivation. I thrive off of it. I didn't know how to juggle. I picked up, I couldn't do it. And I just learned how to juggle, and I love to juggle now. It's just, what are the weird things out there that you can do? But in terms of my main focus is really, I travel a lot. It's a huge cornerstone of my life. I've been to 30 countries now. I've worked in 5. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I spend time in filmmaking, writing and developing content, and then directing content, which is really where my career is going now. And then the other side is my stunt work, which is anytime I'm doing performance on screen. And I guess that kind of blends into like the athletics, martial arts type of stuff that I do. So 2013, I graduate college at University of Buffalo. You graduate that same year, Seth?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was dating a Ukrainian Russian girl. She was half and half at the time. So I know all too well what you're talking about with the directness. Sweet woman named Dasha. Actually, you probably met Dasha.
I don't think I ended up meeting her. I don't think I ended up meeting her.
Really cool girl. Yeah, she actually fought in kickboxing at the Arnold Classic when we went out there.
Awesome.
Yeah, she was great. And so I was really getting my first real out of the country experience where we went together to Russia and Ukraine for that summer after college. So we spent like 2 to 4 months in Russia, traveling all throughout Ukraine, parts of it that have now been seized by Russia, actually, if you're out in Crimea, and then went all the way back up into Poland. And that radically changed my perspective on life. Radically. I've always been thirsting for different ways of looking at life in the universe. And being in Ukraine, I spent a week in a place without electricity, working on a farm with her. And just to see that people are still today living that way, working that way, but finding value and happiness and love and passion in that kind of space made me really rethink, why are we also concerned with these
you cut out a little bit.
E, F, G of life?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah.
Am I back?
Cut. I got no audio from you.
No audio. Let's see.
Is it? I don't think it.
Nothing changed on my end. You didn't mute me, did you?
Is it just me?
Yeah, I'm not muted.
No, I still don't have you. Let me see. Let me switch it to my.
You hear me now?
I'm detecting problems right now on the computer. I'm just running it through a check.
Okay. I'll stand by.
Can you still hear me? Okay, that didn't work. Let's see. Headset. Let's try again with let's see if can you talk again? I don't know. Let me try and unplug it and plug it back in. Okay. How are we doing now? Anything?
Are you hearing me?
Yeah. All right, I got you. Nice. Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, a little bit.
It just, I just have about 10-ish, 15 more minutes.
That's fine. No worries, man. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what just happened. I've never had that issue before.
Welcome to the world of media. This is my life. Everything where I can. That's the law, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, long story short, I don't know where you heard up to. Traveling in Ukraine really radically changed my life. Saw a lot of people living so differently than what I was raised on, but still finding happiness.
Yeah.
Passion. So I came back. That was the fall of 2013. And I was still working on a film that I was producing when in college with one of my film professors. Worked on that throughout the year and started doing freelance media jobs. I started a little boutique production company that I actually really had been going through college called Mono Productions. And we were doing a bunch of different interesting content. I was shooting out in San Francisco for a while, covering this Hive collective of global leaders. I was doing work down in Virginia, work out in New York City with my friend's company, Digital Lose. Trying to find exactly what it was that I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. But I said, a year from graduating college, I will move from Buffalo. Buffalo wasn't where I wanted to be. It's not ever a place I felt at home.
Yeah.
So I actually did a film festival that winter where we got a lot of success. We actually won 6 awards at the New York Holiday 48-Hour Film Festival. And did the short film that really blew up. And then all of a sudden I started having contacts in different cities of people who wanted me to come work with them or do some stuff. Long story short, I heard there was work in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, Atlanta, I could fuck with that. Atlanta. So I had never been there. I knew nobody here. So I was with my girlfriend at the time. We just packed up our car and drove south. She was going to have to come back to school. So she would just come with me for a few months, really. So we came down here, and within 3-4 days, through a friend of a friend of a friend, I met somebody who let me just come onto their set and PA, just come be a production assistant on a movie called Operator. It was a movie that had Ving Rhames, Luke Goss in it, Misha Barton, a couple of these folks. And I managed to, it was shooting in the South is kind of like the Wild West down here. Like, it's not like working inside of the old boy, like New York and Hollywood system. There's a lot of indies here that kind of run through town that run crazily. This project was run crazily when I say that, but I was able to take advantage of the craziness, and I got promoted to shooting the EPK, the electronic press kit, all the behind the scenes. So I did that, and I got a chance to meet people and talk to them while I was doing that. That ended up, on that one film, I met contacts that I'm still good friends with today, actually. So over the next year, I kept producing my own content through this production company. I thought that's what I wanted to do, was grow my own production company. We did a lot of cool stuff. I used to go back to Buffalo to help run, are you familiar with like the Harbor Center down in Buffalo?
No.
Like where that new skating rink is downtown, and they built up the whole arena and stuff.
Okay.
There's a children's museum there that I helped them do end up raising like $35 million for their capital campaign to build this children's museum. So I worked really intimately with them, people with the Harbor Center. I was, making moves, meeting cool people. I just wasn't that passionate about what I was doing until I got asked by a lot of people to start teaching martial arts to actors. So teaching martial arts to actors, I was teaching a bunch of people stick work, some people that were doing shows like Ant-Man and the Avengers and stuff like that, and Walking Dead. And people were really digging it. I was showing them different knife stuff, and all of a sudden I had this group of people who were really interested to learn from me. So it was 2014 that I started a company called On Camera Combatives. And that was where we were teaching and designing fight movement for film. And I used a lot of my time in Filipino Eskrima, which is very angularly driven, while camera is all angle based too. So one thing that's interesting about Filipino martial arts is it abstracts the martial arts a lot. It takes it out in diagrams in ways that you can really understand it, which is necessary if you want to be able to show something for screen. If I want to understand how my body moves at any given moment, how I react back over and take a punch, understanding angles and movement is really important. So did that for about 2.5 years full time. We taught 2,000 people in our first year, which was really great. Taught in cities. We started up a group in Toronto, Ontario. We started up a group out in Los Angeles. We started a group in Florida. We had our group here in Atlanta. We had one in Savannah and one in New York City, and then also through Dr. Tim Burton in Buffalo. So it was picking up. It was going great. And but at the same time, I started to realize that I was just teaching martial arts full time.
Yeah.
Which, I love martial arts, but there's something to when you're teaching beginners constantly over and over. For me, it erodes my passion of it. And I wanted to make movies. So somebody asked me like, hey, you want to come do special skills background acting work on something? So I was like, okay, I'll try that out.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm still shooting all my own content, trying to get that off the ground. And worked on a movie called Allegiant. It was like the sequel to Divergent and Insurgent. And tried out and got to the highest level of people who were doing the background work with a bunch of other guys who are still doing stunts now today.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. We were all kind of getting our start at the beginning. And did that show, got interested, started training with some stunt people in town, and ended up getting my bump into the Screen Actors Guild back in 2015. This was doing a TV show called The Grand Prince of Moscow. I starred in a movie called Vigilante, where I played the vigilante character. I played a character in this Grand Prince of Moscow show. Simultaneously, I was still acting and do a lot of that work. I like to diversify where I can.
Yeah.
And that led me to getting bumped in the Screen Actors Guild. Well, then all of a sudden, all the stunt opportunity arose from that. And from there on, my first show was The Originals, like a sequel to The Vampire Diaries. And then I went over to doing shows like MacGyver and shows like Queen of the South and shows like, I worked a show up in New York called Avenue Q for a little while, which was interesting. I've been doing now The Resident I'm on my third season of doing that show. I was actually with them for their entire third season, doing everything from outer space sequences to getting blown up and wired pulled. And they started moving and moving. I've trained a lot of guys who have worked in high level fight movement stuff. I've been on The Walking Dead doing creature design work. So I was a zombie several times, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
And now this year I'm jumping into some even higher level stuff. I'm about to start on a Marvel show, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of high level career type stuff, moving with the best movers in the world. But simultaneously to this, I've grown a filmmaking career, which is really where I see myself long-term. Stunts is fun for me. I like to move. I love martial arts. I like to use my body where possible. And really in my everyday life, I'm kind of stunting anyways. I like to jump over railings and I'm crawling around on all fours up the stairs. Like the weird shit my parents didn't want me to do now gets me paid pretty well.
Yeah.
So for all the people who feel like they're weird out there, or if you ever feel like they're weird, embrace that shit if you can make it work for you. Yeah, I was not cool in middle school or as a kid. I was the weird kid who wore like the one ring from the Lord of the Rings around my neck. Suddenly all those things just fell into my personality in a way that it became socially acceptable later, I guess. But anyway, long story short, I started up with a company over here called Right Media Group. And it was second unit directing stuff, which means I was running the units that were doing everything from high speed to motion control robotics, designing fights for film, but more from the filmmaking side. I was directing commercials. I was directing different stuff. And I ended up running into a company again called Right Media. And we developed a property together, a film I had written called Grob, which is something we're still moving forward. We have 3 films in development now, the most recent of which is a film called Regression. We were actually very close to getting the Grob film off the ground. We had started raising funds through escrow, but then the pandemic hits, and then all of a sudden theatrical movies don't happen. So anybody who's doing an independent thing just might as well say goodbye to everything because nobody's investing in movies that were designed to be released in theaters. So we've retooled over the last few years. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work on major music video stuff. I've directed stuff for like the Migos and for Gunna. You know, we've done stuff recently for Lil Baby and Monica and 2 Chainz and all these kinds of people. So working in that sphere, at the same time developing really innovative film technology. Have you seen The Mandalorian?
Yes.
Yeah. So they shoot that on a thing called the Volume, which is a giant LED space. It's innovating the way that films are being brought to life. So we at Right here in the Southeast are the first people to ever tie volume technology to motion control robotics. We're partnered with Sony and a bunch of other people. So I directed a piece of content that we had shot right when the pandemic hit. Actually did another movie called 19 COVID Lane. It was like a parody piece, might be cool to check out. It got 5 million views on Funny or Die. It ran on Funny or Die, which is cool. And so, been churning all this kind of stuff out, and it's led to us now using and leveraging this technology for the first, independent film, which is just meaning independent of a studio. For the record, an independent film could be $150 million film. It just means you're not kind of broken out from a studio. So looks like we'll be shooting that this fall, this psychological thriller film called Regression.
Nice.
So exciting. So I also have a part in a TV show coming up that I can't talk about, but it'll be a recurring role on a pretty cool show that I'd be happy to update you on in a while. So yeah, the acting stuff and the performance is going great. I'm getting my own films off the ground now, and I'm still directing pretty often. I got a great office over at Right Media here in town. I can longboard there. I can walk to my yoga studio. Nice. It's awesome. Nice. And managed to, since that trip to Russia, visit 28 other countries. So even during the pandemic, I mean, I was just in Alaska for New Year's.
Nice.
And congrats. Thanks, man. And then in September, I was in Turkey for about a month.
Yeah, I saw the Turkey posts.
Highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Any highlights from Turkey?
Man. All right. So here's another thing I'm working on. I'm working on a concept for a TV show called Dangerous. Basically, the premise of the show, if you've ever seen like Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmerman or like No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain, would be the episode focuses on a dangerous thing. Maybe it is fire breathing. Maybe it's martial arts fighting. Maybe it's people in Alabama who go noodling. If you're familiar with this, where they like dive down and jam their arms inside of catfish's mouth and pull them up and their arms on. It's crazy. Yeah. Or it's snowmobiling or dog sledding in the Arctic or climbing Machu Picchu, whatever it might be. So going to the place where these things are done and studying the culture and the history and the people who do them to understand why people take calculated risks, why they want to do this, and how can we maybe learn from each other on the ways that we take risks, because life, I think we'd all agree, is probably what's most valuable to us. And then at the end of every episode, I'd have a rotating co-host and we'd have to try the dangerous thing. Nice. So yeah, it'd be kind of like jetting around the world doing crazy shit. The kind of stuff that my mom hates. Yeah. But every time I tell her, she doesn't want to know. She's like, "What are you doing now?" I'm like, "I'm being I'm like getting fire gelled." I'm like, "Watch this, Mom." She's come around to it though. Yeah. So yeah, I went paragliding from the highest place in the world you can go paragliding. A place called Fitya. This place is like way up on a mountain overlooking part of the. I'm looking at a map right now. Which sea is that? It is the Mediterranean. Yep. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Overlooking the Mediterranean. And you take this bus going up that's like flying up with no guardrails. You get up to the top and you get to run and jump off this cliff and take the hang gliding up. And we went with pro instructors. So they did flips with us. We got to do a thing where we were like tail diving, simulating a crash. It was really awesome. Yeah. So yeah, Turkey's a very unique place. Istanbul's a city. I'd say Cappadocia, if you've never heard of it. Ancient city made of like rock dunes in the middle of Turkey, Cappadocia. They take hot air balloon rides up in there. It's like an Instagram girl's paradise over there. But highly recommend it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, dude, that was a speed run through the past 7 years of your life, but that was like.
Yeah. I've got a beautiful girlfriend I'm with now for about 3 years.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's going really well. And I'm also really into electronic dance music. I don't think I'm big into like the festival scenes. I always like wearing costumes and playing characters anyway. So why not do that and dance and have fun? It's all the best shit together, man. Yeah. So I'm a big frequenter of that kind of music. I have some friends who spin and do DJ work. I've been laying down a little bit of music myself, which has been fun. Nice. In our crew in Atlanta, which is now international, is called the Super Best Friends, which is like all people who do like different types of stunt work and this kind of stuff. We all have like names, pseudonyms in this universe that we go into. And we're working on a cartoon show for that right now as well.
Nice, man. Dude, that's awesome. I don't know. Do you have time for any more questions or are you trying to run? I don't want to.
Maybe with a few more.
Yeah, I guess. So, I mean, you're obviously, you mentioned, that you weren't like the cool kid in elementary school. You weren't the cool kid in middle school, whatever. I went through like a similar phase myself. I'm not going to lie. What do you think was like a turning point, and how did you just kind of own yourself, right? Like not try and just be like everybody else, because clearly you're not being like everybody else, but you're wildly successful because of it, not in spite of it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is realizing that conformity is actually not the secret to success, even though public school systems and Buffalo, where I'm from, it was very vanilla. It was very like, hey, get a house, have a family. And if that's your thing, man, I think that's awesome. I plan on doing those things. But if a square doesn't fit a square, then there's a problem. I want to do a TED Talk one day on being weird. I think being weird should be so celebrated, because an expression of you, if you can funnel your weirdness into productivity, you can do anything the fuck you want. any musician who spends all day, all night in the room pressing buttons or playing guitar is kind of weird.
Yeah.
There's an introvert element to that. Gymnasts, I know some of these circ people, if they were doing that stuff on the street, people are like, what are they doing? I don't even give a shit anymore. I go around and I juggle in airports. I'll be there with my friends doing some kickboxing type of stuff and people are staring at us. And I think it's crazy that those people are sitting in a chair to wait to go sit in a chair on the plane. So just in a chair. I'm like, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
So travel really changed a lot for me because I realized, oh, wait, there are so many different ways of looking at this thing called life.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little later. I'd say martial arts gave me the discipline to follow through on what I wanted to do and what I believed in. But even prior to that, if you want the real nugget of what changed things for me, in middle school, I was just, dude, I was so weird. I'll send you a picture of me in middle school. I had this like Jew fro, covered in acne. I wore dragon shirts. I loved everything dragon. And now I'm back to wearing dragon shirts, which is cool. But I wear like dragon silken shirts. I was just weird, bro. And going into high school, the first day, there was one kind of cool kid in middle school who used to talk to me, a guy named Ricky. And we were all like lining up to get like our appointments of where we go to in class. It's like this big long line for the freshmen. And I walked up to this Ricky kid and I was like, hey, Ricky. And he just looked at me and he looked away.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be cool one day. And I never did it through doing conventional norms. Actually, the way I guess I got like a little more, I did win the Mr. West competition at my school, which was kind of like a male beauty pageant thing, but I didn't do it by doing like the normal things. I did my martial arts, which I got other people into. And then I started with the school's morning announcement program. So I was basically the newscaster on there and made all kinds of crazy videos that were funny and shit. And I just wanted to connect with people and make them laugh.
Yeah.
By the way, get people engaged and entertained and realize there's different ways of looking at things than your own perspective. I think that's a piece of advice I got learned on me a really long time ago. And it's an invaluable one.
Yeah. I feel like as kids, being the outlier gets you picked on, right? Like being different by any mean, like, you know, it's something, it struck me that this is a personal revelation, but I caused issues with my relationship with my pops because he had an old sled, what are they called? The slider rider, what's the red, the old sleds. No, the old, well, yeah, basically like a toboggan, but like the old sleds that are not plastic, right? Where it has like the two red actual like things that go into the dirt kind of thing, instead of like the plastic ones that everybody has now, the cheap plastic ones, right?
Are you talking about sleds like snow sleds?
Yes, yeah, snow sled. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha, yeah.
so he had like the old classic one. I wouldn't go sledding with him because I didn't want to have the different shit because I didn't want to get picked on. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, that's like old classic, my dad's history. You know what I mean? But like I caught, like, you know, I'm probably an 8-year-old at this point, but I caused issues with him because I didn't want to be different. But that was probably the better one. That could have been the cooler one, right? But like I, from getting picked on, just wanted to keep my head down and then cause problems, right? And so I think that, you know, like to your point, as a kid, the outliers get picked on, right? Like the sticking out nail gets hammered kind of thing, right? But as you grow and as people become, you know, more mature and stuff like that, you start to actually say like, wow, this guy Ryan's pretty cool. You know, like he's pretty funny. He's kind of different, but you know, like that difference is what brings spice to want somebody to be friends with you, right? And so
I don't get along with a lot of these, like, you know, like we have a term here in Atlanta called the Buckhead Betties. It's like our Midtown people who are just very vanilla, the Brads and the Chads of the world, bro. God bless them, man. They got to do it. I want to crawl around with my friends, jumping, flipping off of things, playing zombies. Like that's what I want to do. And it just so happens that there's ways that will appeal to people once they realize that it's like, oh, it's not weird just to be different. It's just you can't be different and that you can also be cool. Yeah. So, you know, I'm nobody, man. I'm just here doing my thing, living my life, having some fun. And I'm just getting started, bro. This next year is about to be some real career pivot shit. I just turned 29, so I'm rounding out my 20s. Last year was a real chance to sit back and reflect because I didn't work for 9 months during the pandemic. I mean, I'm always working. I was shooting my own projects. I was doing my own stuff, but I wasn't out there building my career where everything was leading, and that kind of got me down. But, you know, I think like anything, you probably know this in martial arts or anything you're applying to, podcasting, whatever. This is a game of tonnage, dude.
Yeah.
If you just keep at it, keep going, keep getting knocked down, but figure out ways to keep getting back up and just go at it, and you're genuine, I really believe things will work out. Most people just give up way before then.
Yeah, yeah. There's that the motivational meme kind of thing of like the person with the pickaxe going through, and they're right next to the pile of gold, but they stop 2 inches away. And
right.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. I think that people don't like to work hard. People don't like to suffer, and like what's going on with the podcast right now. All right, I'm getting 50 to 100 views on most of the podcast. Cool. Like I love to have thousands, but that's not exactly like, oh wow, I'm getting 100. You know what I mean? Like I'm chasing that, right? But like you said, the tonnage, right? Like as I do more podcasts, more people like yourself that are awesome, right? That are killing it. Hopefully people come, right? But with you, right? Like the more content you put out, the more stunts that you do, the more people that you bump into, they realize, wow, Ryan's fucking talented, and therefore you're gonna keep fucking growing.
And it doesn't happen overnight. I'll tell you this. So like my girlfriend's family, her brother and his wife just moved down from Indiana. She moved down from Indiana too. I'm pulling the whole crew down. And they've been there for less than 6 months now. And my girlfriend's sister-in-law, Abigail, lovely woman. She's great. She's a hairdresser, and she was having a hard time getting her license and getting stuff moved. And I'm trying to get her to start doing hair for film. And it was just like, a couple of months were going by, and she was getting so frustrated with herself, so fucking frustrated. And I laid it out for him, like, Abigail, I spent 5 years before I really started doing the work that I really wanted to do. So I think that's the problem with a lot of people, is because we're taught this system of apply for job, get job, do job.
Yeah.
There's not this in-between flux state. If you even look at like the way Europeans look at stuff, they have a thing called gap year. If you're familiar with this, where they take a year between high school and college and they just go do whatever the fuck they want to do. They go travel the world. They go see interesting things. They go meet interesting people. They go party and have some fun, which is what most kids do their freshman year of college anyway. But from that flux space, you get to know so much more about yourself when you're not fit into a mold.
Yeah.
And I think if we could get, I meet so many people who work jobs they hate, and they have money. And then they're unemployed, they lose the job, they quit their job, whatever. And then there's like a few months until they get their next job. They are stressed that whole time, like, oh man, I gotta be working, I gotta be doing this, I gotta be doing that. Instead of chilling for a minute, focusing on themselves, going inward, what can I work on with me? And I think if you get comfortable in that flex state, that's where the real clarity comes from. That's where the real progress comes from. So it sounds like you're in one yourself right now, my friend.
Yeah. Some growth phase.
Yeah. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, listen, I unfortunately got a split, but it was really lovely talking to you.
Dude, it was awesome. Like I've been closing out, 6 months, maybe a year. We'll check back in, see where you're going, see what's happened, with the wild world of Ryan Monolopolus. And last quick question. Your kid wants to do martial arts. Which one do you put him into?
My kid wants to do martial arts. Which one do I put him into? I wouldn't put him into just one martial art. I'd send him into a cross-disciplinary program. There's something about learning one martial art in its absolution from the ground up. So there's an energy of what is it better to be, a mixed martial artist or a mixed up martial artist? And that sometimes happened at CMAC when a lot of kids didn't have orientation in martial arts and they just learned one day of this, one day of that. And then all of a sudden you have no foundation. So I would probably put them into 2 or 3 arts that are very different from one another and see which one they respond to. I'd probably give them into something like jujitsu, get them into something like stick fighting, some like really high levels weapons fighting where they have to move around, not lazy man's arnis, like really good arnis.
Yeah.
And putting them in a striking art too. Maybe be kickboxing, maybe even, I love boxing. I think boxing is an art not practiced enough, and just see what he or she responds to. And whatever they love, hopefully it's all of them. Yeah. Maybe it's one of them, maybe it's none of them, but my kid's gonna learn how to scrap.
Yeah. Well, hopefully my kid doesn't meet your kid in the dark alley, or at least they're friends.
That'll be cool. Play zombies or something.
Yeah.
It'll be cool.
Well, dude, thank you so much. It was awesome. Dude, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, man.
Take care, brother.
Peace. Later, man.
Later, brother.
What's going on, guys? Hopefully you enjoyed Ryan. I think it was awesome. Definitely not going to be surprised if this guy is, walking, at an award ceremony or something to that extent. in the future. He is just, absolutely killing it, ton of hustle. Hopefully, as always, you appreciate somebody staying happy and healthy. So hopefully he's staying happy and healthy and we can just keep growing, right? That's all you can really hope for. So let me know what you guys think. Always appreciate the time. Thank you. Peace.